Good afternoon for you. For those of you in the Eastern time zone, we probably have people from across Canada, the U.S., and maybe some folks from the U.K., given those are the areas that we work in. So today, I wanted to touch base about retention and physician retention. A lot of what I do is obviously recruitment and trying to find physicians, but what I've found over the last 20 years is that the better you retain, the better you can recruit, right? It's obviously, makes sense, right? If people don't leave, then it's going to be an environment that people want to go to and come to and hopefully experience the same productivity and the same enjoyment. So I know the title is Four Ways to Retain Physicians. As I was preparing, I sat down and I actually came up with 7 items that I wanted to mention today. So we'll go through the 7, give some thoughts on them, and then you can message me and let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if I'm off the mark on anything. I'm always happy to have respectful discourse because I only end up learning as well, right? So the first thing, and this is going to be a bit dependent on the region that you're in as well, because how physicians are paid is different across the country and across North America. But ensuring that physicians are being compensated fairly, and then it's current, right? Because we need to understand things like cost of living and and changes in benefits and things of that nature, right? Because benefits for our physicians in the U.S. is probably one of the largest costs for their families. So and understanding that and ensuring that you're competitive with respect to salaries. When it comes to things like fee for service, then obviously we need to advocate for the governing bodies to ensure that the fee schedules keep up with inflation and aren't stagnant. But that's often not in a hospital's control. So how do we fix something and address a retention option or a retention problem that's not in our control? Well, efficiency, right? The ability to allow the physicians to have the resources they need to see more patients effectively and safely, ensuring that you can support them with whatever tools can ensure that they have the best quality and efficiency in their practice. Will allow them to see more patients or to see the same number of patients in a less time, because that in itself is almost like making more money, right? And then ensuring that the procedures that you offer and the things that you offer are, the latest and greatest, will allow them to make more money, but also allow them to keep up their career. There isn't, in my mind, a direct correlation between payment and retention, but it is definitely, in a competitive market like we're in right now, it is definitely a consideration. Most people don't leave not just for money, they leave for other reasons. So, some of the other things that we'll address will also play as much of a part in it as compensation. The big one we're seeing now, especially with some of the newer to practice physicians, is flexibility of schedule, right? Like we've seen this across all other industries with Uber and with remote work and consulting. So you work when you want to work. And it's only natural that physicians, nurses, and everybody else are going to want to consider those things as well. So allowing physicians to have some input on their schedule and ensure that they can understand, when they work and why they work and where they work and those types of things. Selfishly, I'm not a fan of entirely virtual medical care, but if we can implement those types of things, that's a possibility, then when appropriate, then that's something to consider as well, right? If you're not having to commute every day, then maybe that's time that you can spend having coffee with your wife or husband or partner, or you're having breakfast with your kids. The things you need to look at around a flexible schedule are asking your people what they need, asking them what works. And then obviously it has to work for patients as well, right? But we know that people would be amicable to seeing their physician in the evening. So if that physician wants to work the evening clinics, then they're still going to see the patients and it's still going to provide the service. Technology, involve any sort of technology that you can to provide workload support, and those types of things I think are a definite component. I think we also have to train ourselves and train our managers and train our leaders to understand that flexible scheduling isn't a side effect of laziness, or it isn't a side effect of people not wanting to work. It's just people understanding that life changes, and sometimes we need supports outside of work to be able to work better, right? I have 4 kids that all need, none of them are qualified to take a bus. So they all need rides to school and from school. So, I've had to alter my schedule because of that. So luckily, as someone that's self-employed, I have that ability. So, but these are considerations that physicians are going to have as well. And then lastly, keep checking in, right? Like, schedules may need to change. People go through different phases in their life, and stuff like that, right? So, it's always a matter of finding the balance between flexibility, but while still providing the patient care that we need, right? Because patient care runs 24/7, and we have to obviously be able to do that. Other aspects of retention are workload support. So how can we ensure that physicians have the support they need, whether it be, hiring more nurse practitioners, whether it is physician assistants, whether it is medical office administrators to help you move patients through the flow, deal with those workload issues, right? And it's a bit of a chicken and egg. If you can't hire, then you can't obviously address that aspect of workload. So how do we engage our physicians so they know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that can buy you time to recruit? Ensuring that you value the workload, so you're constantly checking in on it, constantly sharing information about what that is, and setting clear expectations that, this is where we're at, and what we're going to do. And then constantly, spend and invest in your team, whether that's training, whether that's additional CME courses and stuff like that. Focus on them and help them and help them grow. That'll help with workload as well. And then, obviously continue to try and recruit as much as you can. But again, retaining will help recruitment. Recognition goes a long way. Recognizing people for the work they do, and recognizing the quality and recognizing the commitment that they provide. And recognition is an interesting one because I think there's 2 aspects of it. Obviously, there are, recognition programs that will provide coffee gift cards or provide snacks or something, or, a gift card somewhere. And those are great, and we need those because I think people like to have a quantifiable sign of it. But I think the other thing is to be visible, right? I'll tell a story about my aunt. My aunt was a nurse, not a physician, but she was a very, very talented nurse. And when I got into healthcare, I asked her what a successful HR person looked like. And in her 30 years of working, she told me that she had one person that she could think of, period. Not the best. There was only one person she could think of. And that person was the only HR person she met. And I asked her why. And she said that person was visible. That person would come to the unit. That person would check in on them, right? So I think that visibility and recognizing people's work is important, especially when you are when you're constantly working at a very high level, right? You're constantly at 100% occupancy or above, and people need reassurance. People need to know what's going on. People need to understand, that there's light at the end of the tunnel and what initiatives are being done, and stuff like that. The other piece is lead by example, right? If your physicians and everybody are working, be visible, lead by example, show them that you're working for them so that they believe that they believe that you're helping them solve the problems, right? Simple little thing I do is, I'll use a personal example, but I remember when I got married, my father told me to send my wife flowers and stuff on days that weren't an anniversary or a birthday or Christmas or Valentine's Day, because those days it's expected. But on a Tuesday where you say, Happy Tuesday, here's some flowers, that shows appreciation because you're doing it for the sake of showing appreciation, as opposed to doing it because you have to, right? So recognize your staff, be visible, and stuff like that. The other thing I think that we need to look at too is communicating ongoing hospital-wide initiatives. People need to understand what's being done for their benefit. And if we do a bad job of talking about it, and we don't, and if we don't involve them early in the process, it becomes one more thing being pushed on them, as opposed to, something that's going to be seen, right? I've heard people complain about things like Epic being installed and implemented because a lot of it is that they're just not familiar with it, and the change management wasn't managed properly, right? So it became something that was pushed on them. But if you can explain why you're doing it early, often, and repetitively, then it becomes acceptable. It becomes something that you can understand. Doesn't mean you're going to like it, but at least you can understand it, right? It's just that notion of, not every leader is going to be liked, but you want them to at least be respected, right? And often you find if you're respected, you end up being liked anyways. And my last item is really probably one of the biggest items, and it's free, right? It doesn't take much money. It doesn't require you to spend a lot of money. Again, leadership visibility, right? I've worked with CEOs that used to have lunch in the cafeteria, and people would talk to them. They knew what was going on. He could share corporate initiatives. He could provide opportunities for people to voice their concerns with things, right? And often what happens is you need to manage expectations, and you cannot do that through corporate emails and news releases and press releases. It needs to be done person to person, right? People work for other people because they believe in those people and they believe in what they're doing, right? And this is probably one of the hardest jobs going, and getting worse and harder as time goes by because of resources and all the lack of lack of healthcare providers, right? We've got shortages of physicians in the most countries. We've got shortages of nurses. And what happens is knowing that we can only recruit so many because we only train so many, we really have to focus on providing the best experience for the people we have. And until we start flipping the equation around and start looking at, okay, how do we make it the best for them, as opposed to how do we make it the best for the budget or visibility? How do we make it the best for the clinicians? Then and only then will we fix retention, at which point then recruitment becomes easier and you become a magnet to people, right? The best bosses have the tendency to recruit easier than other people because people know that and people come to them, right? So, kind of as a closing factor or closing blurb by me, biggest things to consider are obviously compensation, number one. Number two, flexible work schedule and work schedule in general, right? Giving people the flexibility to have a bit of control over that goes a long way. Workload support, number three. Recognizing the work that they do, number four. Signs of appreciation, number five. And there are tons of organizations out there. I think there's one called Gusto that I talked to a couple of weeks ago that they do recognition programs beyond just buying stuff and giving it out. So there are appreciation and recognition programs. Again, communicate what's going on at the hospital or your clinic or your organization. Communicate what, why, when, and how, so that people understand, right? Understanding and communication is the key to all healthcare delivery in my mind. And lastly, leadership visibility, right? I know CEOs and VPs are busy people too, but part of their job should be being visible to their organization. And in this dispersed world and remote world, that's becoming harder and harder to be physically in all kinds of places. But you know what? Sending text messages or even just little videos that you send to people, can go a long way, right? So either way, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. Hopefully my next session, I'll have some guests so that you don't have to just listen to me. But either way, I'm always happy to talk about recruitment, retention, physician engagement, and stuff like that. And keep an eye on our social channels. We've got a bunch of physician opportunities across Canada and then throughout the US as well, and are constantly adding new opportunities for physicians and physician leaders. So all the best. Have a great day. It's Wednesday. We're halfway to the weekend. Take care.